Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and this is my number 7 in my series of my top 10 directors. And this is going to be slightly different than the last couple because I went through big filmographies of those directors and told you which films I really enjoyed and what I might not have, or what ones I want to check out, and how, like, particular things about them as directors that really makes them stand out. This director stands out in my top 10 because it's not really their body of work why they're on here. It's for one particular reason why they're on here. And that particular reason is so strong and influential on me that this person has to be on my top 10. Because if this person keeps making films in this series of films, I will go see them forever. And that is Dr. George Miller, the director, the creator, the crazy mad scientist mastermind behind Mad Max. And Mad Max, if you couldn't tell, is super influential on me. If you look at my username, the Wasteland Reviewer, it's from Mad Max. He is the warrior of the wasteland. And what George Miller has created since the 1970s with this franchise is unbelievable. And I'm going to throw out there, he's made other films. Lorenzo's Oil, I haven't seen. Babe, he didn't technically direct it, but let's be real, he was probably very hands-on with it. I love Babe. I love Babe so much. And it's the weirdest thing, thinking about, holy crap, the guy who made Mad Max made Babe. And that was weird going from being a child watching that to an adult, because then I watched it as an adult, and I'm like, there's some dark, like, twisted things in Babe, honestly. And I'm like, that makes a lot more sense. And then I watched Happy Feet. And holy crap, is that a weird-ass movie. And I'm like, I can see George Miller making this. This makes sense. And the thing is, all that crazy Technicolor crap from Happy Feet was in Mad Max Fury Road. I'm like, that makes sense. But this is more for me to talk about how influenced I am by George Miller, which I've had my Oscar party the past 3 years, and I guess I'm trying to remember. Fury Road came out so this was the 2016 Oscars. That Fury Road was up for all those Oscars. I'm sitting there crossing my fingers for that Best Director award to go to George Miller, because he earned it and deserved it. Sorry, Alejandro Gonzalez Inarritu. And when he was not announced, I slammed my notebook on the ground and was just like, ah! Felt like I was watching a sporting event. Got really into it. But George Miller has been able to do something that's so unbelievable. And what he does as a director is create an unbelievable kinetic energy that is so intense and so feral that, like, I could just sit here and gush over Fury Road, honestly, but go check out my review of Fury Road if you really want to hear very, very much in detail about that. But George Miller, as a director, is able to create such an incredible, crazy, twisted world. And, like, he wrote Fury Road. There wasn't a script. They were storyboards. This is all coming out of his mind, and he's creating this giant world. And starting all the way back with Mad Max, and watching the first Mad Max, it's an interesting revenge story. And it's really low budget, and that could take you a lot out of it. But then you make Road Warrior. And the Road Warrior is one of the greatest action films ever made. And I remember seeing that for the first time and being like, holy crap. It was such a crazy, unbelievable world, but felt so real. And everybody in it, all their details, their costumes, their names, how they interacted with each other, everything was just so perfect and created such a crazy thing. The Gyro Captain and Baba Yaga and the Lord Humongous, Toady, and the feral kid, all of these things, and they're so weird, and all these choices that George Miller made for all these different characters, but they worked and created these iconic characters. Like the Road Warrior is so influential. I'm a pro wrestling fan. How many freaking wrestlers and tag teams have ripped off their whole entire gimmick from Mad Max? Legion of Doom with their crazy shoulder pads, and Demolition with their BDSM costumes, and all these things. It's like they're from the wasteland, and this is how influential George Miller is. He was a surgeon in a emergency room that saw all these car wrecks, and like all these things popped into his head, and how jarring and stylized everything is. And just looking at, like, he didn't fully direct Beyond Thunderdome, and you can tell, because a lot of the Mad Max films, most of them feel timeless. Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome feels super 80s, and feels caught in the 80s, and didn't have the same kind of vibe. But George Miller was able to get something out of Mel Gibson that allowed him to become such a huge star, and Mel Gibson had it in him, and their collaboration of creating this enigmatic nomad who barely talks, honestly. I think he has like 12 lines in the whole entire Road Warrior, but it makes it so interesting. And then you have Fury Road, which is years and years and years later, and that is the perfect Mad Max film, the perfect George Miller film. There's no script. This was all storyboards. This is all out of his brain, put on that film. And the fact that he is so detailed with every single character, giving them a complete, crazy, outrageous backstory. And the actors were committed with that and had that. And they felt so real and realized, even though you didn't know in the film that the Doof Warrior, the guy with the flaming guitar, was found with his dead mother in a cave, and he wears his mother's face. That's the mask he's wearing, is its dead mother's face. Why is that even thought of for that guy? Literally all he does is sit there and play a flaming guitar, but all those details created such a crazy world in this film, and it was so important in hindsight and realizing how this whole world was built. And there's so much kinetic energy. How the action is shot is not like a Transformers ending where it's like all of these things going on and blah 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 and so many crazy things. That could have been the finale of Fury Road, but it wasn't. It's because George Miller knows how to shoot action and knows that you need a focal point, and to shift that focal point throughout and tell a story. Visual storytelling, it's what film's about. And that's what you get in Fury Road, because barely anybody talks. No one talks a whole lot. There's not a whole lot of exposition dumps because you don't need it. You don't need an explanation really of how this world is this world, because it is. And you realize it and you believe it. And that's the most amazing thing. And people say, there's no plot to this movie. There is a plot. And there are themes. There's important themes. And I have a bunch of posters in my office where I work. And I work at a college. And each poster in that room, in my office, has a reason for being there. It's not just because I love the film, which I do. I have 4 film posters in my office. I have a Lord of the Rings one, a Dead Poets Society one, an Interstellar one, and a Fury Road one. The other 3 are pretty straightforward with why they're there. I even made a custom poster for my Lord of the Rings one that quotes Gandalf talking about all we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us. That is so resonant. But the thing is, why Fury Road? There's a point in this film where a lot of people are like, oh, they just turn around and go back to where they started and blah, blah, blah. There's no plot. That is such an unbelievably important scene in terms of theme. You have these people who are in hell. They live in hell. and they have a chance to an oasis where they can live, finally, truly live. And what's in front of them, and it's explained, is 40 days or whatever of desert in front of you, and you just might make it. It'll just be constant, just going back. There won't be anything in the way, but you might be able to limp on and survive. Or you could go back, where there's a giant wall of adversity in front of you, this giant army. But if you overcome that, you will thrive. You will finally live, instead of just skating along, doing the bare minimum, or just scraping along in life. And that's such a powerful scene, and George Miller is able to make that so poignant in that moment. And it really comes down to where Max and Furiosa have that realization together. And George Miller is able to create these unbelievable worlds, create this unbelievable action, and it's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, and so fully realized in so many ways, and the crazy worlds he builds. And honestly, I do script writing as a hobby, and maybe someday it won't just be a hobby, but the thing is, I wrote a whole series of films that were so unbelievably influenced by Mad Max, because George Miller speaks to me so much. And you would think that somebody who's this big of an influence would be higher on my list, but the thing is, it is just Mad Max, honestly, and it's a couple of films. And the other directors I'm going to talk about have these laundry lists of films that I love, and the big thing is why George Miller means so much to me, and that is why he's my number 7 director on my list of top 10 directors. So keep checking back in over the next 6 weeks until we finally get to my number 1 director, and keep on supporting your Wasteland reviewer.